In this lecture, we are going to study about input and output in C++. So we will see how to take input and also give output in C++ programming language. Alright, so let's get started. So coming to input and output in C++, the C++ language does not define any statements to do input or output. So by default, C++ language does not define any statement for doing the input or output. Then how do we do input or output in C++? Instead, C++ includes an extensive standard library that provides input, output, and many other facilities. So though C++ language does not have or define any statements to do input and output, it is having something known as a standard library. Now what is a standard library? It is an extensive library that provides many facilities, and one of them is the input-output facility. So using the standard library from C++, we are going to do the input and output. So we will see how to do that. So for the purpose of input and output, we will make use of something known as the IOStream library. So IOStream stands for Input Output Stream, and remember, this is a library that is a part of the standard library that we have in C++. So this is the one that will provide us with the facilities for doing input and output. So we will see how it is done. So coming to the IOStream library, the IOStream library is made up of two types. One is the iStream and other one is the OStream. So that is why IO. So what is the iStream? iStream is the input stream that is used for taking inputs. And OStream, it stands for output stream that is used for giving outputs. And now we understood I is input and O is output. Now what is this stream? What do we mean by stream? So stream is nothing but a sequence of characters read from or written to an input-output device. So any sequence of characters that we are writing to or reading from an input-output device is known as a stream. Now I hope you understood what is the meaning of input stream and output stream. So these two make up the IOStream library. Okay, so we have understood the IOStream library. Now how is actually input and output done? Let's see that. So the standard input and output objects is what will help us to actually do the input and output. So let's see what are they. So the IOStream library defines 4 input-output objects. Let's see what they are. Number 1, we have CIN, which is pronounced as CIN. So we call this as CIN, and this is used for standard input. So it stands for console input, and we pronounce it as CIN, and this is the object that we are going to use for taking inputs. And then secondly, we have COUT, which we pronounce as Cout, and it stands for console output, and this is the standard output object. So this object is what is going to help us for giving the outputs. Then we have CERR, pronounced as CER, which is the standard error object. Now this is used for standard errors. And then the last one is CLOG, which is pronounced as CLOG, and this is used for general information like log information and all. Okay, so the most important two things here are CIN and COUT. So the CIN, this is of the type iStream. So we said that iStream and OStream, they are types in the IOStream library. So we have discussed about what is types already in one of the previous lectures. So the CIN is actually an object of the iStream type. So that's what you have to remember. And then Cout, CER and CLOG, they are all of the type OStream. So again, OStream is a type that is there in the IOStream library, and then the Cout, CER and CLOG, they are objects of the type OStream. So these are the main objects that we need to keep in mind: CIN, Cout, CER and CLOG. And CIN and Cout are the most important ones and the most common ones that we are going to extensively use in this course as well. So let's take an example program making use of this CIN and Cout in order to see how they work and how their syntax looks like and how we have to write it in a C++ code. So coming to this example, here we have written a complete code, a complete program, and here we see that the first line
print F comma
is include IO stream. So here we see that the first line is include IO stream, then int main, then we see here std, and then we see that we have two colons, and then it's written here cout, and we have two angle brackets, and within quotes it is written enter two numbers, and we close the quotes, and here again we have these two angle brackets, and it's written here std and colon end l, and then semicolon. And here we have int n1 equal to 0, n2 equal to 0, then std cin n1 n2, and then std cout, the sum of n1 and n2 is n1 plus n2, std endline again and return 0. So let us see what are the meanings of all these things written in this program. So let's start from the top itself. So here it is written hash include, and within angle brackets it is written IO stream. So what is this? This is the header. In every C++ program we will be mentioning the header. So IO stream is the header that we are going to make use here, and IO stream is the one that contains the library that enables the cout and cin and all those objects. So that is why we have to include this IO stream library. So I'm telling my compiler that include this IO stream header in my program. Then here we have int main. So what is this? This is the main function. So we have already discussed about main function. So every C++ program will be having a main function. So here we have a main function, and the return type is int. So we have also seen about this in the previous lectures. Okay. Then next, here we see within this curly braces, the body of that function is there. The function body is over here. So this is what is actually going to perform the operation, whatever is going to be done. So let's see. So here we have std cout. So what is this? This is the standard output object. So we already studied that cout is the standard output object. Now why am I writing std cout? Now std is the standard library. So as we already said in the beginning of this lecture, C++ does not define any statements for doing input or output, but it includes an extensive library that is a standard library. So this cout is actually present within the standard library. So we are telling that use the cout that is present in the standard library, and this colon that we see here, this is known as the scope operator. So we are telling that use the cout that is within the scope of the standard library. So this cout is going to print something on the screen. Now here we see these two angle brackets that are opening to the right. So this is the output operator. So after cout you have to write this output operator, and after that only you have to mention what you have to print. Okay, now here it is written enter two numbers. So this is the string literal. That means the actual thing that we are going to print on the screen, and it has to be written within this double quotes. So whatever is written within this double quotes in a cout statement will be printed on the screen as it is. So this is the string literal that will be printed. And here we see again we have this output operator, and it is written here std end l. Now what is this? This is actually a manipulator. Now what do we mean by manipulator? So we see that this is a string, and it is just manipulating the stream. So we are actually trying to print something as a stream on the screen, and this manipulator endl stands for end line. So it is manipulating the stream, and it is taking the control to the next line. So if you write endl, then it will break from this line and come to the next line on the screen. So that is what we mean by endl. And again we see that std is written here. Why? Because this endl is also defined inside the std library or the standard library. So we are saying that use the end line that is within the scope of the standard library. And why are we using this output operator again? Because we see that the type of data has changed. Till here we were just printing something that we wanted to print on the screen, and we have closed the double quotes, and here what we are trying to put inside this cout is an end line which is not a string but it is a manipulator. So whenever the type changes we have to use this output operator again. So that is why this output operator is used again, and then we end the statement with a semicolon. So this entire cout statement, it starts from here and it ends at this semicolon. Okay, so that is the entire cout statement. So what it is essentially going to do, it is going to print on the screen, enter two numbers, and then it is going to take the control to the next line. Okay, now after this we have int n1 equal to 0, n2 equal to 0. Now what are these? These are variable declarations. Now variables are something that we are going to learn in detail in the coming lectures, but just remember for now that variable is something that can store values, and then we are declaring two variables n1 and n2, and they are of the type integer. So they are integer variables, and initially they are holding the values 0, 0. Okay, so int n1 equal to 0, comma, and n2 is also equal to 0. So this comma is telling that this n2 is also an integer and it is equal to 0, and then we end it with a semicolon. Okay, so that is a variable declaration. And then next we have this stdcin, and then we have these two angle brackets that are opening to the left, and then we take n1, and again we have this two angle brackets opening to the left, and then n2. Now what do we mean by this? Now stdcin is the standard input object, so we have already seen that in the previous slide. So we want to take input from the user. So we ask the user here to enter two numbers, and when the user is going to enter those two numbers, we have to store it somewhere. So that will be stored in this n1 and n2. So we are making use of the cin object, and again this cin is within the standard library scope. So that is why we are writing std and this scope operator. And then we have this angle brackets here, which is the input operator. So this is the output operator which will be used in cout, and this is the input operator which we use with cin. So there are two input operators here. So one is for this n1 and another one is for n2. Now what it essentially does still here we ask the user to enter two numbers, and we came to the next line, and then we declared two variables n1 and n2, and then when the user will enter two values from the keyboard, it will be captured by using this cin, and the first value that the user enters will be stored in n1, and after pressing space or enter when he enters the second number, that will be stored inside the variable n2. So that is what it does. Okay, now we have here a big cout statement, that is stdcout, and then it says the sum of n1 and n2 is n1 plus n2, and again n line, and then return 0. So return 0 is nothing but the return statement. Okay, so let's take a look at this cout statement here. So we want to actually print that the sum of and the two numbers that the user has entered is, and then we want to print the actual sum. So that's what we are trying to do here. So cout and then output operator, and I want to print this string on the screen, the sum of. So that is why I put it within double quotes. Now I want to print the first number that the user has entered. Now here we see that it is going to print a variable and not a string. So because of that, I have to use this output operator again. So I put this output operator, and then I will print n1. What is n1? n1 will store the value that the user has entered, and that will be printed on the screen. Okay, and after this I want to print the word and, and. Now when I print and, we see that and is a string, and here it was a variable, so there is a change. Because of that, I have to use the output operator again, and then within double quotes I write and. So whenever you want to print strings as it is, you have to use double quotes. But for variables, we see that we don't have to use the double quotes. Okay, so I print and, then I want to print the second number that the user has entered. So again we see we are going to print a variable, so we have to use the output operator again, and I print n2, and then I want to print the word is, is. So this is again a string, which is again different from this variable here. So I use the output operator here again, and I print is, so that is why it is put under double quotes. And then now I want to print the actual sum. So I open the output operator here again, and n1 plus n2. So what will this do? This will actually add n1 and n2, and that sum will be printed there. And again, this is the sum of two variables, so we don't have to put it under double quotes.
Hi, ma'am. Share screen ko po. Wait lang. Wait lang po. Makikita niyo na po. So, ito po yung code ko. So, same lang po. Tapos, binago ko lang po yung strings and of course, yung solution po sa dulo. Pwede, nung nirun ko po, magpapa-enter naman po siya ng numbers. Apa. So, try ko po, 6, tapos, 5. So, ito po yung lumabas. So, the sum of 6 and 5 is 11. The difference is 1. Tapos, yung product po niya is 30. And then, yung quotient niya po is 1. So, yun po yung lumabas sa quotient kasi yung ginamit ko po is yung forward slash. Pero kapag yung modulo naman po yung ginamit ko, ang ibibigay niya po is yung remainder po. Opo. Yes po.
Wait lang po, share screen lang po. Bali po yung pagkakaintindi ko po sa instruction kasi mag-change po ako ng number sa N1, yung value po ng N1 tsaka N2. So nag-change po ako dito sa may N. Bali yung value po ng N1 po is 15. Then yung value po ng N2 po is 3. Then ito po yung code po na yung para sa operation po. So kapag wait lang. So kapag niran ko po, ito po yung magiging sagot. Bali yan po yung nakuha ka kung ano sagot. Given po ito po. Wait lang po. Wait lang po. Bale, ito po yung output ko. $15 and 3 po. Output. Hindi na po ako nag-input. Yes. Thank you.
Hello po ma'am, dinig po. Ilan po?
po ma'am. Share screen ko. Kita na po ma'am. Bali ma'am, ang ginawa ko po ma'am, noong una parang inisa-isa ko po ma'am, bali ganyan. As pinag-compile ko na po ma'am. Bali ma'am, yung pagkasunod-sunod niyo po ma'am, kukunin niyo po muna yung sum, tas product, tas difference, tas uli po yung quotient. Tapos mag-i-insert ka rin po ng number mo po. Tapos ito po, example ma'am, pag iraran na po yung code. Enter two numbers, 2 plus 2, the sum of 2 and 2 is 4. The product of 2 and 3 is 6. Kasi nag-insert po ako ng 2 and 3. Kaya, ang ganun po. Di ko lang nalagay ng parang introduction po ulit kasi nagmamadali na po ako. Pari yun. Pari yun.
Good afternoon po. Share screen na po. Nakikita na po. Ma'am, yung sa akin po, may naka-enter na po na value siya. Tapos kapag nirun po, ito po. Opo. Thank you po.
Nakikita na po ma'am. Bale, ganun din po sa akin. Meron na pong value yung variable. Yes po. Ganyan.
Hello po, good afternoon. Share screen. Ayan, nakikita na po. So, yung ginawa ko po is Xcode po. Yung isa po is input and output, tas may isa rin po ako na output na lang siya. Hindi na po kailangan maglagay ng number. Graph lang. Ito po yung output lang. Yung hindi na po kailangan maglagay ng number. Or yung isa, run ko lang po. What happened? Alam ma'am, ay, wait lang. Ito po. Alan for task. Ayun lang po pala ma'am yung output lang. Wala yung isa. Na-ex ko po yata, sorry. Thank you po.
Ay ma'am, hindi pa po.
Hindi po na po natatawag ata si Joshua. Si Joshua Opo.
Yes po. Share screen ko lang po. Kita lang po ba? Okay. So, ang ginawa ko po is may input din po. So, try po natin. Fine. So, ganyan din po yung business. Ganyan din po. Opo. Thank you po.
Nakita na po.
Opo. Hindi pa po ako nakapag-download. Ganun lang din po ginawa ko tulad po nung mga nauna sa akin. Kaso nga lang po nito po Opo. Opo. 20 and 4 po yung nalagay ko. Ito po yung result. Tama po.
Kita na po ba? Ayan po yung ginawa ko din kapag po ni-run. Ay, wait lang ma'am. Wait lang po. Ayan po yung code, tapos ito po yung ano. Ito na yung lumabas po. Ayan po. Opo. Opo, naglagay na lang po. 20 and 22 po.
Good afternoon po. Mag-share screen lang. Kita na po yung screen. Ito po yung akin, need pa po mag-input ng numbers. 8 and 16. Ayan po yung output po. Thank you po.
Hello po, good afternoon po. Wait lang po. Kita po ba? Ayan po, yung ginawa ko po kasi, ginawa ko na po yung use namespace std para po hindi na po mag-i-input dito sa unahan. So, ayan. Tapos po, ito po yung naging result. Nag-input na din po ako ng numbers. Ayun lang.
Ito na po yun. Ito na po, ma'am.
Ito po, ma'am. Kita na po ba, ma'am? Ito po. Same lang po nung sa kanila. Ayan. Ito po pag renal. Hindi ko po alam. Thank you po.
Hello po, ma'am. Share ko po. Wait lang po. Kita.
Wala po, ma'am.
Ganon din po yung ginawa ko. So, I enter po ng 4 and then 5. Ayan po. Thank you po.
This is the folder where I have my sum.cpp. So I have to compile the program now. So for compiling, I have to type g++ space and the name of my file, which is sum.cpp. Okay, so I type sum.cpp and I press enter, and we see that there are no errors and the output file got generated, which is named as a.exe, which is the default name of the output file. Now I have to run this output file. So for running the output file, I have to type ./a.exe. Now when I press enter, the program will run, and here it is asking me for two numbers. So we see that the cout statement got executed, enter two numbers, and then this end line statement has taken the control to the next line here. So if you did not give this, then this cursor kind of thing would have been there over here, but since we gave this end line, it came to the new line on the next line. So it is waiting for me to enter two numbers. So let's enter two numbers, let's say 3 and 7. So you can either give 3 space 7 or 3 enter and then 7. Okay, so I have entered two numbers and I will press. Enter. So when I press enter, what it is going to do is it is going to accept these two integers that I have entered, 3 and 7, and it will store them to n1 and n2. Now I press enter and then it says the sum of 3 and 7 is 10. So what happened is it printed this, the sum of is printed till here, and after that it prints n1. So what is n1? The first value I entered was 3, which was stored in n1. So n1 is 3, so 3 is printed, and then it prints the word and. So and is printed here, and then the next number I entered was 7. So 7 is stored in n2. So it is printing n2 here, so 7 is printed, and then it prints the word is. So is printed here, and then it prints the sum of n1 and n2. So n1 plus n2, that means 3 plus 7, which is equal to 10. So 10 is printed, and then we just send the control to the next line. So this is how we can make use of the cin and cout, which are the standard input and output objects that are used for handling input and output in C++. Okay, so I hope you understood this simple program and how the cout and cin objects work for handling input and output in C++. So remember, cout is for console output, which is for output, and it is within the scope of the standard library, and similarly cin is for handling input, it is console input, and it is also within the scope of the standard library. And this end line is also a manipulator which is present in the standard library. Alright, so I hope you have understood this program, and with this I hope you have understood how to manage input and output in C++. So in this lecture we are going to study about namespaces. So in the previous lecture we saw how input and output are implemented in C++ programming, and there we saw the syntax that we use for cin and cout, that is for taking input and for giving out outputs. So keeping that syntax in mind, we are going to study about namespaces. So let us see what are these namespaces and what is it used for. So the first question that we have to answer is, what is actually a namespace? So let's see. A namespace is a declarative region that provides a scope to the identifiers inside it. Now what do we mean by this? So it is a declarative region. So it is a region and it will provide a scope to the identifiers that are inside that scope. Now what are the identifiers that we are talking about? So identifiers means they can be the names of types or functions or variables, etc. So for these kind of identifiers, the namespace is a declarative region, and that region will provide the scope to that. So don't worry if this definition looks a little confusing, it will become clear as we move ahead. So they are used to organize code into logical groups and to prevent name collisions that can occur especially when the code base includes multiple libraries. So in the previous lecture, when we took the example of input and output, we saw that whenever we were trying to write an output on the screen, we used std and then we used the scope operator and then we wrote cout and then we wrote what we wanted to print out on the screen. So we saw that it was written as std cout. Now what does that std mean? So by std we mean that cout is declared inside the standard library. So std stands for the standard library. So we are telling the compiler that use the cout that is defined inside that standard library. So there can be cases when we have multiple libraries in our code and there can be different type of couts. So let's say that there is another type of cout that is defined inside another library which performs in a little different way. But we want to use the cout that is from the standard library and that works in the way we want. That is for displaying the output on the screen. So we are just specifying which is the cout that we want to use. So namespace is the region that gives the scope to the identifier. So now I hope it has become a little clearer. Alright, so we were talking about the standard namespace or the std namespace. So let's talk a little more about that. So the standard namespace, which is written as std namespace. So let's take an example program. So here we have a program which is a complete program. So here we have the header and then we have the main function, and then here we see that we are just asking the user to enter any number. So we use standard cout. So std, this is the scope operator as I said, and cout. And then we are just declaring one variable, that is n1, and it is of the type integer and the initial value is equal to 0. Now whatever the user enters, we are accepting it or storing it in the variable n1. So we are using stdcin and then we are just trying to output the value the user has entered. So again we use stdcout and we are saying that the entered number is n1. So this is just a simple program to take an input from the user and display what the user has entered. Okay, now here we notice that we are using std again. So we notice that we use stdcin and stdcout instead of simply writing cin or cout. Now why is that? The prefix std and the scope operator indicates that the name cout and cin are defined inside the namespace named std. So std is the namespace, or it is the library within which the cout and cin are defined. So we are telling the compiler that I want to use the cout and cin that is defined inside the standard library or this std namespace. So that is what we mean by namespace. Now I hope you got an idea of why this is called the scope operator, because this cout is defined within the scope of the standard library. So we are saying that use a cout within the scope of this standard library or the standard namespace. So that is what we mean here. Now the problem with this is that whenever we are writing cout or cin, or whenever we want to use something from this standard namespace, we have to explicitly mention it like this by using this std and this scope operator. We cannot simply write cout or cin. So that is a problem that we face. So in order to avoid that, we will see what are the solutions that we can have. So for that, we are going to discuss about namespace using declarations. So let's see what do we mean by this. A using declaration lets us use a name from a namespace without qualifying the name with a namespace name : prefix. Now we are going to make use of something called the using declaration. So this keyword is important, using. So by making use of this using declaration, we won't have to explicitly mention again the namespace before using that name that we want to use. So let's see some example. So here the syntax is using namespace and the scope operator and name. So let's see an example to understand this. So here we take an example again. So this is the same program that we saw in the previous slide. So we are asking the user to enter any number and we store it into n1 and we just display it out again. Okay, so here we see that we are using just cout. We are not using stdcout. Why? Because we have mentioned it in the beginning of the program itself that we are using the cout from the standard library or the standard namespace. So I mention it beforehand. And how do I do it? By making use of the using, using keyword. So I say that we are using the cout from the standard namespace. So if I do this, I don't have to type std again before this cout. So I can simply write cout and the compiler knows that we are using the cout from the std namespace. Okay, so let us try to run this program using VS Code and see what will be the output. Okay, so here I have copied that same program here. So we are using std cout here, and then I'm just writing cout. So let's see if this program will compile correctly or if it will throw any error. So I'll go to the terminal, I'll open a new terminal, and the name of my file is ns.cpp. Okay, so let me compile this program by typing g++ space ns.cpp. Okay, so it has compiled successfully and the output file is a.exe. So let's try to run it and see. So /a.exe, and then okay, so it is running successfully. So it asked me to enter any number. Let me enter 3. Enter. So the entered number is 3. So this program is working correctly. So even though we did not write std cout here, just by writing cout also it works, because I already mentioned that we are using the cout from the standard namespace. Okay, now let's try to remove this std from the cin and see what will happen. Now I have written cout here and now I am writing cin here. Okay, so let's save it and let us run this program. So I come back to the terminal here and I will type g++ ns.cpp and I press enter, and here we see that it is throwing an error. So it is saying that cin was not declared in this scope. So we are saying cin, but it does not know where is cin. So we have to say that cin is from which library or from which namespace. I can either write std cin as it was written before, or I can write using std cin just like we wrote for cout here. So let me do that. Okay, I write using std cin now. So we are telling the compiler that whenever I use cin in this program, it is from this std namespace. Now let's compile this program again and see if it will work. So let me just clear the terminal. There is a command called clear in order to clear up the terminal window. So let me run the program again, g++ ns.cpp, and it compiled successfully. Now there are no errors, and let me run the output file and we see that it is compiling successfully. So we see that if we mention which namespace we are using from the beginning of the program itself, then we don't have to specify the namespace again and again while writing the program. Okay, so that is about the using declaration. Okay. So this was our example. Now let's take another example here. So here we see that we are making use of the end line as well. So here end line also is there, and we have seen that when we usually write end line, we write std and scope operator and end line. But here I am specifying that I am using the end line from the std namespace. So I have specified all the namespaces for cout, cin and end line. So because of that, when I write this program, I don't have to explicitly mention the namespaces again. So I don't need to write std here, here, nor here. So this program is also correct and it will compile correctly. Okay, so one more problem that we can face here is that we have to specify for each and every name that we use which is a namespace. So cout, cin and end line is written. Now if there are other things that you want to use, you have to again mention them. So in order to solve that problem, we can use something known as the using namespace std. So here what we are doing is that we are going to write this using namespace std. Now if we write this, what it means is that we are using the standard namespace, and whatever names are going to be used in this program, it is from the standard namespace. That is what it mentions. So I don't have to explicitly mention that I am using cout from std, then cin from std, and nline from std. If I just write this single line, it just implies that whatever names I am using here are from the namespace std. So we can just write cout, nline, and cin just like that without explicitly mentioning from which library or which namespace they belong. So that is about the using namespace std. But one problem that we can face here is that if we are making use of multiple libraries, that means like if we are going to use cout or cin, let's say from some other user-defined libraries or some other libraries other than std, in those cases it can cause problems because we mentioned here that it is going to make use of only the std namespace. So that could be a problem, but that is advanced level if you are making use of other libraries. But here in our course we are going to mostly make use of the cout, cin, and names from the standard library itself, so there won't be any problem if we use this as well. So anyway, let's go to VS Code and write this also in our code and see if it compiles successfully. Okay, so we come back to this same program, and now instead of writing all this using std, cout, cin and all, we will just write one line, that is using namespace std. Alright, and I save this program, and here I am just making use of cout, cin. So here we are not having nline, so anyway let's put one n.
po ma'am, dinig po ako. Dinig po ako. Kita na po ma'am. Monitor ako na. Nilagyan ko ng picture ng mobile.
Share screen ka lang pa. Wait lang. Kita na to? So, same code lang po kanina, pero tinanggal ko lang po yung STD, tas colon. Kasi meron na pong using name declaration sa harap, which is yung tas, eto po yung niron ko. So, try lang po ng 7, tapos 8. Tas, same lang po, nag-work naman po siya 5. Tas, for me, mas maganda po na gamitin yung using namespace kasi mas clear po intindihin yung code. So, yan lang po. Yes.
Hello po. Share screen ko lang po. Run ko lang po siya ulit. Ganun lang din po. Tinanggal ko lang po yung STD. Tapos nilagay ko lang din po yung namespace. Yes po. May value na po na naman. Thank you.
Hello po. Share screen ko lang po. Kita na po ba, ma'am? Same lang din po nung kanina. Enlist ko lang din po yung STD. Ito po siya pag niran.
Po, ma'am. Share ko lang po. Bali yan po. Ginawa ko na lang po. Bali mag-insert na lang po ng dalawang number. Tapos kukulin na po agad yung sum difference product calculation. Kasi yan po. Tsura ng code. Malinis po.
Hello po. Kuya akin. Yun lang din po. Malinis lang po. Po yung kinalabas na. Awo, hindi ko na po inalagay sa babae. Wait lang, i-share ko lang po, ma'am. Okay na po.
may numbers na po. Apo, values.
Nakikita na po. Okay po. Pares lang po siya ng kanina na may fixed value po. Apo. Yes po.
Same lang din. Yes po. Ma'am? Wait lang po, ma'am. Saan po, ma'am? Oo nga, ma'am. Hindi ka napansin, ma'am. Pero kung nag-run din siya, ma'am. Opo, ma'am. Sige po. Hindi ko lang po napansin, ma'am. Opo. Sige po, ma'am. Oo, wala talaga akong napansin, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon po. Mag-share screen lang po. At ito po yung full. Same lang po sa kanina. Tinanggal lang po yung STD tapos gumamit po ng namespace. So ito po yung output. Ayun po. Same lang din po. Thank you po.
Hello po. Share screen ko. Kita na po ba? Hello po. Okay, so same lang din po. Tinanggal ko lang po yung STD. And nag-enter na rin po ako ng numbers. So yan po lang. Okay na po.
Ma'am, pwede mo po yung kanina. Sabay ko na lang din po. Oo. Ma'am, kita po ba? Sorry po. Kita po kanina po. Ah, ayan po. Hello.
Hindi po.
Apo.
Sige po. Ito po, yung code lang po yan. Wala pa rin po. Sige po. Lubot po ma'am, pati po last time. Pwede po send ko na lang po SS sa GC. Naku-share naman po ako. Sige po. Kaya nga ma'am, nakaka-bad report eh. Opo, yung code naman po yung output naman po yung ayos. Ma'am, try ko po yung output. Ayan po ma'am, meron po. Yan, yung code po talaga yung ayaw niya ma'am. Ayan po yung yung first po to. Opo. Ayan po. Wait po. Po, ma'am. Sige po, ayos na po. Ito po ma'am yung yung second na output. Ayan po, kita na po. Ito po ma'am. Yan po yung using namespace std na po. Kita na po yung opo. Send ko na lang po sa code ko po. Thank you po. Opo, thank you po. Sorry po.
Hello po, rinig po. Nag-share lang po. Kita na po. Wait lang po. Ayun po. Meron po.
Wala.
Kaya rin po ma'am.
Ayun po. Na po ako, nag-learn po. Apo.
Nakikita po yung screen ko. Ayan po yung output. Kaya na po ako nag-start.
Hello po, ma'am. Share ko po. Kita po, ma'am. ma'am, wala po. Ito na lang. Wait lang po. Opo, kaya na. Wala po. Ito na ma'am, pinipindot ko po. Lumalabas po ma'am. Near window ko na lang po. Alone. Ayan na lang po. Okay po.
Hello po. 1:30 na
Let's go!
Kita na po yung screen ko. Bali yung ginawa ko po is tinanggal ko po yung ano. So gumamit po ako ng using namespace std. Then mapapansin nyo po is nawala na po yung mga std per line po ng code. Then may dinagdag lang po ako sa ano, since yung ginawa ko po, nag-declare na po ako ng value ng n1 tsaka ng n2 which is 15 and 3 po. So gusto ko pong mapalabas yung value ng 15 and 3. So nag-print po ako ng value of first number is n1 tas end line, then value of second number is n2 end line po. Tapos nagdagdag lang po ako nito para po hindi po masyadong magulo or hindi po masakit sa mata yung paglabas po ng result po. So ito po yung result. Ayan po. Thank you po.
Yes po.
In this lecture, we'll be studying about comments in C++ programming. So we will see what are comments, how to write comments, and what are the types of comments that are there in C++ programming. Okay, so let's get started. So coming to comments, comments are program text that is ignored by the compiler. That means whenever we are writing a program, we may want to write something which is apart from the source code, or we may want the compiler to ignore something. So those are known as comments. Now comments help the human readers of our programs. So if you are writing some complicated program, and let's say that there are some functions that you are writing, and you want some other people who are reading your code to understand what that function is doing. So you want to write a small description, or you want to write one line specifying what that function does. So in order to do that, you will write it within comments, and when you write it as a comment, it will not be treated as source code and the compiler will ignore that, but it will be helpful for the human readers. So they are typically used to summarize an algorithm, identify the purpose of a variable, or clarify an otherwise obscure segment of code. So like I said, it can be used for just clarifying or explaining what a specific piece of code or a variable or something else does. So the compiler ignores comments so that they have no effect on the program's behavior or performance. So this is what we just explained. It is not going to have any effect on the behavior or performance of the program because it is completely ignored by the compiler. So the question is, for whom are comments? We just said that compilers ignores the comments. Now who will make use of comments then? The readers of our code. So the readers of our code makes use of comments to understand the working of the code, like we just explained. So it is important to comment your code if you want to mention how that code is working and so on. So an incorrect comment is worse than no comment at all because it may mislead the reader. So you have to be very careful while writing comments, because if you write an incorrect comment, then that can mislead the reader. So an incorrect comment is always considered even worse than not writing any comment at all. So you should be careful. So when you change your code, be sure to update the comments too. So if you are changing your code and if it is not matching with the comments that you have written earlier, make sure that you change the comments too, so that a person who is reading your code again will not get confused, but he will always have access to the correct comments. So it is just a good practice to write good comments and make sure not to write wrong comments, because it is considered worse than even not writing any comments at all. Alright, so now we will see how to actually write the comments in C++. So coming to how to write the comments in C++, there are two types of comments in C++. One is a single line comment and the other one is known as a paired comment. So let's try to understand what are these and how they differ from each other, starting with the first one, that is single line comments. A single line comment starts with a double slash like this and ends with a new line. So everything to the right of the slashes on the current line is ignored by the compiler. So for writing single line comments, we just have to put a double slash like this, and whatever is written after this double slash till the end of that particular line will be ignored by the compiler, because that will be considered as a single line comment. So a comment of this kind can contain any text, including additional double slashes. So it can contain text, it can even contain other double slashes as well. So just remember that this is only for single lines. So if you want to comment two lines using single line comments, then you will have to put double slash on both the lines. So that is how multiple lines can be commented using these single line comments. So let's take an example. So here there is a program and here we are printing just one line. Let's learn single line comments. And here we see that there is a double slash and I have written a line here. This is a comment. It is ignored by the compiler. So the compiler is completely going to ignore this particular line that is written here, and it is not going to have any effect on the program. So let's just verify that by running this program in our Visual Studio Code. So here is that particular program that we just saw. So here we see that this is the comment, this is the line that is commented out, and let's see if the compiler is going to actually ignore this or not. So the name of my file is cs.cpp. So I'm going to the terminal, open a new terminal, and I'm going to compile this code. So I have to type g++ and name of the is cs.cpp. Now enter. Okay, there are no errors. So let's run the output file. The output file is a.exe. That is the default output file that is created. So I have to type /a.exe, and here we see that the output is let's learn single line comments. So this is the one that is printed, and we see that this part is completely ignored by the compiler. So the compiler does not do anything with this part. Now if I remove this double slashes, what will happen? Let's see. So if I remove this double slash, then we see that this is just a single line, and we have not written it within cout, nor is it written within any particular identifier. It is just a single line, and this is not a valid C++ syntax. So it should throw an error. So let us save this program and run it again here. So we see that this was not declared in this scope. So it is just going to throw error because of this line. So the main purpose of this is to just show that this double slashes comments out that particular line, and the compiler actually ignores it. Okay, so that is about the single line comments. Now let's go to the next one. So the next one is paired comments. So in paired comments, it uses two delimiters, which is a slash asterisk and asterisk slash. So these are the two delimiters that are used, and let's see how to use them. It begins with this and it ends with this. So it begins with the slash asterisk and it ends with the asterisk slash, and everything written between this will be commented out. So these comments can include anything that is not a asterisk slash, including new lines. The compiler treats everything that falls between this and this as part of the comment. So here we see that we can write even multiple lines of comments. So we just have to make sure that whatever we want to comment out are enclosed between this and this. So these are the delimiters that are used. So let's take an example here again. So here we see that we are writing a program where I am printing out let's learn paired comments, and then here I have the starting delimiter for our comment, and I am writing a whole line here. This is a paired type comment, and I come to the next line, and here I have written that everything between the delimiters are ignored, and here we have a cout statement here again saying this too, and then this is the ending delimiter. So we see that it started here and it ends here. So whatever is between these two delimiters will be commented, and it will be ignored by the compiler. So let's put this program into VS Code and see if it actually works. So here I have the same program that we just saw. We have the starting delimiter here and the ending delimiter here. So according to what we have studied, everything between this and this should be commented out. So the only thing that should be printed by this program is let's learn paired comments. Okay, let's compile this program. Let's go to terminal and open a new terminal here, and then the name of my file is cp.cpp. So I will compile it by typing g++ cp.cpp, and we see that it compiled successfully. There are no errors. Now let's run the output file, which is a.exe. So I run it. We see that the output is let's learn paired comments. So this is the only thing that got printed, and everything that is commented out is ignored by the compiler. So this is how we write paired comments. Alright, so with that I hope you understood how to write paired comments. Now with respect to paired comments, there is one more thing that we need to keep in mind. That is, comment pairs do not nest. Now what do we mean by this? So a comment begins with slash asterisk and it ends with the next asterisk slash. Now as a result of this, one comment pair cannot appear inside another. That means this is a comment pair, and inside this you cannot put another comment pair because it will cause a problem. So let's see why. So let's take an example here. So here we have taken an example that is the same example that we took in the previous slide, and here we have written let's learn paired comments, and here I am trying to comment these lines. Okay, so here we see that the delimiter starts here and it ends over here. This is the starting, this is the ending. Now in between this I am trying to add one more line of comment. Here you see another paired comment. So here I am starting the delimiter again and ending it again. So basically this comment is inside this comment. So we see that there is nesting of comment pairs occurring. Now what will happen if we compile this program? Let's see. So here I have that same program. We see that this comment starts here and it ends over here, and in between there is another pair of comments which is starting here and ending here. Okay, now if I compile this program, let's see what happens. We open a new terminal and the name of our file is cpn.cpp. So I will compile it using g++ space cpn.cpp. So let's press enter and we see that it is throwing an error here. So it is saying expected primary expression before slash. So what the compiler has actually done is it has treated this as the starting delimiter and this as the ending delimiter. So this is ignored. This is treated as a part of the comment text. So here it starts here and it ends here. So this is the actual pair that we have. Now up to here is commented out because this is starting, this is ending. Now here we see that now there is just an ending delimiter and there is no starting delimiter here. So because of that we see that nesting of comments cannot be done, and it is due to this that it has thrown an error. So that is why we say that nesting of comments is not possible. Okay, so I hope with that you understood why comment pairs do not nest. Okay, so with that we come to the end of comments. So I hope you understood what are comments and what are the types of comments that we have in C++ and how to use them for commenting out things that
I turn into an owl.
In the previous lecture, we have studied about comments in C++ programming language, and we have seen the types of comments and how we can comment out things in a C++ program. And there I gave you a few exercises to find out what will be the output of those statements. So here in this lecture, we are going to discuss the answers or the solution to those exercises. So we will see what are the actual outputs and why are the outputs like that. Alright, so let's get started. So this was the exercise that I gave you. What will be the output of the following statements? So these were the 4 statements that I gave you. So here we see that in some there are delimiters inside double quotes and in some they are out.
share screen ko po.
Ito na po screen, ma'am. Na-compile ko, ma'am, bali po ma'am yung line 7 po yung may problema po kapag kinumpile ko po siya. Yan po ma'am. Pero pag tinanggal ko po yung line 7, tapos kinumpile ko po ulit, then na po siya mag-run. Wala ito po lumabas. Output yung output, ma'am. Ano yung ibababa, ma'am? Ano ibababa, ma'am? Sorry.
Yes po, ma'am. Ito po, ma'am. Ito po. Yung sa line 11.
Kita na po yung screen ko. Kita na po. So, naka-red po siya. So, yung gamit ko po kasing compiler is CodeBlocks po. Wherein sa CodeBlocks, kapag may isang error po na line, hindi po talaga siya magra-run yung program. Ayan po. Pag niyas ko po yan, hindi pa rin po siya magra-run. Then, mag-highlight po yung red dito since may error nga po. So, ito po yung error pa po. So, kapag tinanggal ko po siya, copy ko lang po. Pag tinanggal ko po siya, magra-run na po. Wait lang po. And so, nag-run na po siya since nawala na po yung error po. So, ito po yung result po na lumabas. So, yung reason po bakit ganyan yung lumabas na result is because yung sa program po, yung sa cout, yung sa fifth line po, which is ito po. Ito po yung lumabas sa unang line. So, ito po siya yung ito po. Ito lang po yung naunang dalawa. Tapos, yung sa dito naman po sa line 6, yun din po, ito po. Tapos, nagkaroon po ng, yung sa line 7 po, nagkaroon po ng space since na-ignore po tong part na to. Since ito po yung double commenting po, yung sa C++. Wherein yung sa forward slash tapos asterisk. Then, ito po, hindi na po siya nasama sa program kasi kasama po siya dun sa comment since ito po yung ano niya. Ito po. Upon nag-nested. Tapos, wherein ito po, papasok po siya since nagkaroon ng close and open quotation po dito since ito po yung papasok na program which is yung forward slash and then yung asterisk po. Then, itong last po is comment na po ulit since comment na po siya ulit. So, yun lang po yung result. Thank you po.
Ma'am, naririnig po. Share screen ka lang po. Ayan. So, ito po yung... Oh, sorry. Tinatry ko po kasi yun. So, ito po yung error po niya. If i-compile po natin siya, same lang din po sa kanila. Sa akin naman po, nasa line 8 po yung error, but still the same third line po yung problem. So, kapag tinanggal ko naman po siya, so, ayan po. Tapos, i-compile po, okay naman po yung lumalabas, especially nung tinatry ko po kanina. And then, when I try to run it, ito po yung lumalabas. Ito po. Na-run ko na po siya actually.
Ano?
So, yun.
French fries.
Gutom na ako, gutom.
Nakalimutan ko yata mag-up. Sorry po.
Thank you po.
Hello ma'am, dito po ako. Wait lang po. So, halos ganun lang ginawa ko. Pag nirunning compile ko, lalabas po yung error, which is yung third line po. Then, i-clear lang po natin. Then, compile po. Kaya hindi naman po ilalabas. Wala na po yung error. Ay, sorry. Yan. Thank you po.
Ma'am, di pa rin po naayos. Pwede po send ko na lang po. Ayaw po na. Hindi pa rin po. Sige po, ma'am. Hello po, ma'am. Kita na po. May parang...
Hello po. Ay, na pala.
Ayan po, ma'am.
Hello po. Share ko lang po. Ganun lang din po, ma'am. Hindi ko na po explain. Na-explain na po nila lahat kanino. Tinanggal ko lang po yung third line ko. Oo. Oo. Kasi hindi po yung lumabas ko na yun. Tama.
Wait lang po. I-share screen ko lang. Ayan po. Kita na po ba? Pag meron po. Oh no. Upload ka man. Nakanina ko. Wait lang po ba? Ay, ayan po. Nag-error. Meron po. Ay, wait. Ay, nag-error din. Wait lang po, ma'am. Nagkamali po kasi yung last po kasi bigla niyo pong in-out. Kaya tinignan ko lang po sa stream ng iba. Feeling ko po mali po yung na-type ko. Wait lang po, ma'am. po alam paano, ma'am. Sige po, ma'am. Ito na po. Ayan.
Ma'am, may kulang po siya dun sa may C out, tapos yung sa line 9 po. Yung C out. Line 9 po, ito po. Apo. Bali, kulang po siya nung asterisk po sa ano po. Bali, yung code po kasi is yung forward slash asterisk, tapos yung quotation, tapos asterisk, tapos forward slash po. Kulang po siya. Apo, tapos may asterisk po. Okay po, ma'am.
Hello po. Kita po. Ayan po yung code. Tapos pag niran po, hindi po gumagana yung line 10. Tapos pag pinura po, ah, thank you po.
Hello po. Share screen ko. Kita na po. Hello po. So, pag niran po natin, may error po yung third line. Third line. Seek out. Then, pagka yung tatlo lang po, bigla po. Okay, so ayan po yung naging output.
nakikita po yung screen ko. So, aalisin lang po itong sa line number 7. Ay, check po na. Sige po. Ayan. Pag giniran ko po siya ng ganito, hindi po mag-error. So, pag ginikit, ayan po.
Naka-share screen na po ako, ma'am. Nakikita na po. Ayun po, so katulad din po ng kanila kapag niran po natin, mag-error po siya sa pang 9 na line. And then, kapag tinanggal po natin, ito po siya. Opo. Opo. Thank you po.
Ito po, nung nilan ko po, ayan dulo. Then kapag tinara ko, nagalan na po.
Rinig po. Wait lang, share screen. Kita po. So, hindi po ako gumamit ng namespace STD. And kapag niran ko po yung pag ganyan, pag niran ko po, nag-error po siya. So, pag tinanggal ko yung nag-manual na lang po ako dito sa ano. Ito yung naka-program. Then, ayun. Pag tinanggal ko po yung nasa 7 line, ito po yung magiging output. Ano ba? Ayan po. Ang bilis lang.
Hello po, try ko po.
Ma'am, pa-next daw po muna.
Nakikita na po ma'am. Meron po nag-edit.
Share screen po ako. Kita na po ba? Ayan po yung output.
Ma'am, wait lang po. I-code ko lang po yung last line. Nabura ko po kasi.
Asim ng headphone ni Kuya, BSIT.
Kaaway ma'am.
Okay na po, ma'am. Ito po, ma'am. Pag po yung line 6 po, pag po nandiyan po siya, nag-error po. Try ko pong burahin kung magiging okay po. Ayun po. Okay na po.
In this lecture, we are going to study about the while statement. So we will say what is this while statement, what is its importance, and for what is it used in C++ programming. Okay, so let's get started. So before we go into the while statement, let us talk a little bit about the flow of control. Now statements normally execute sequentially. Now what we mean by this is that in programming, whenever we write programs, usually the statements that are written in the programs are executed in a sequential manner. So let's take an example here. So here, let's say that this is a program. So we begin the program here and then we have a few statements. So to be precise, we have 3 statements over here. So in sequential execution, we see that we begin here, then statement 1 is executed, and then statement 2, then statement 3, and then we end. So we see that the execution is sequential in manner. So that is what we mean by sequential execution, and that is a kind of flow of control that we have in programming. Now, programming languages also provide various flow of control statements that allow for more complicated execution paths. Now, besides this sequential execution, programming languages also gives us a support for other types of flow of control, which are not just sequential, but they can follow many other complicated paths. That means it is not essential that they have to be sequential all the time. They may come from one statement and they may go to some other statement here, and from statement 3, let's say that it can come back to 1 again, and then it can come back to 2 based on the conditions and the requirements. So that is what we mean by the various flow of control statements. Okay, now as we understood the flow of control, now we are in a position to understand and study about the while statement. Now let's see what is the while statement here. A while statement repeatedly executes a section of code so long as a given condition is true. So in a while statement, what happens is that there will be a section of code under the while statement, and then that code will be executed again and again until and unless the given condition is true. So we see that there are 2 main things that we see here, the section of code and then there is a condition. So we have to check the condition, and as long as the condition is true, that section of code under the while statement will keep on executing. Okay, so let's see the flow of control of the while statement here. So here we usually call the while statement as a while loop. So it is called a loop because it is something that is going to be executed again and again. So that is why we call it a loop. So as I said, first of all there is a test condition. So we will test the condition that is there, and then if the condition is true, then the statement will be executed. So whatever statements we have under the while statement will be executed as long as the condition is true. Now once this is executed, it will go back again and test the condition, and again if the condition is still true, again these statements will be executed. And now this loop will go on again and again till when? Till the condition becomes false. So once the condition becomes false, we exit or we come out of the while loop. So that is how the while statement works. So let us take an example program to understand the working of the while statement. So here is an example that shows the working of the while statement, and also it shows the syntax of the while statement. So here we start our program by including the header, and then we have the main function here, and inside the main function here we are declaring a variable called count. So it is an integer variable called count, and it is initialized to 1. So remember that whenever we want to use a variable in a C++ program, first of all we have to declare it. So declaration means we are telling the compiler that I am going to use a variable called count, and then we have to specify its type, that is it is an integer type or whatever type it may be. So that is a declaration. Then we have the initialization. Initialization means we are giving some initial value to that variable. So here we see we are saying count is equal to 1. So this is the initialization part. So here in this one statement itself, we are having both the declaration and the initialization. Now we come to the important part, that is the while statement. So here in the while statement, this is the syntax. We have to write while, and within brackets or parentheses, we have to write the condition. So remember that there was a test condition. So this is the condition that we are giving. So in the condition I am saying that count is less than or equal to 10. So it means that as long as the variable count's value is less than or equal to 10, execute the statements that are within the while statement. So here inside this while statement or inside this while loop, we have the statement or this piece of code which is enclosed within this curly braces. So what does it do here? Let's see. It says stdcout, hello there, and then std endline. And then we are saying that count equal to count plus 1. So that is the statement inside this while loop. Now what is the meaning of that? It means that we are trying to print out hello there and then a new line, and then we are incrementing the value of this variable count by 1. So count was 1 in the beginning. So after the first execution of this, the new value of count will be count plus 1. So what is the old value of count? 1. So 1 plus 1 equal to 2. So count will be equal to 2. Now after that it will come back to this while statement again and check the condition. Is count less than or equal to 10? So what is the new value of count? It is 2. So is 2 less than or equal to 10? Yes, it is true. So it will again execute this statement, hello there, and then it will come and increment the value of count again. So count now becomes count plus 1. So
Variable.
the value of count now is 2, so 2 plus 1 equal to 3. So the new value of count becomes 3. Now count is equal to 3, and then it will come back and check the condition again. So is 3 less than or equal to 10? Yes, it is true. So again it will execute this piece of code here. So this will go on again and again till count is equal to 10. So when count becomes 10, it will check is 10 less than or equal to 10? Yes, it is still true. It will execute once more, and then after that this count value will be equal to 11. Now when it becomes 11, it will check the condition, is 11 less than or equal to 10? No, the condition now becomes false. So it will not execute this statement anymore, and then it will come out of the while loop and it will return 0 and the program terminates. So
Yes po. Time na po.
Let's go!
we see that this part is the condition and these are the statements inside the while loop. So whatever is there in the condition will be checked, it will be executed if it is true, and then it will come back and check this condition again, and it will execute the piece of code if it is true. So this process is going to continue again and again, and that is what we call the while loop.
Sabado po. Sabado.
Yes, ma'am. Na-update ko na po, ma'am.
Thank you po.
Thank you po, ma'am.
Salamat po, ma'am.
Thank you po.
Salamat po.
Salamat po.
Thank you po, ma'am.
Thank you po, ma'am.
Bye po.
Thank you po, ma'am.